some of the extraterrestrial races developed a proto-rationality, and the so-called Nephilim or Anunnaki is exactly one of those races. But this race called Anunnaki, which is a biological race, it's an exception because, in fact, they recently came to know about Yahweh.
Hi, friends and viewers on YouTube. Welcome to another video on our playlist, Fractals of Knowledge. We are here with Jan Val Ellam. How are you, Jan Val?
Hi, everything's good, Rodrigo. Hello, everyone.
Let's move on to another one, shall we? Folks, if you can, please leave a like, share the video. That YouTube package is very important for us and helps the video reach more people. We have a Clips channel as well, if you can. Please subscribe to the Clips channel where you can find some really interesting content. All right, I will show the question on the screen. This is a question from Martin4931. Dear Mr. Rogério, how do other extraterrestrial civilizations interact with Yahweh? If you could quickly tell us who Yahweh is. Do they accept Yahweh or ignore the fact that he even exists? Okay, Ellam, with you.
Well, the Creator, who fell into his own creation and managed to rebuild himself, is the being that we call Yahweh, Brahma, Chaos. He has numerous names, Allah, and so on. He has many titles which depend on the culture that talks about him. He is a being who resides, or let's say is imprisoned inside an antimatter universe, which is a twin universe to ours. Our side is of a material nature. Twin in the sense that both were born from the same event, which was an idea, a project that, let's say, slipped from the mind of a so-called divine being. And this thought was misconstructed and absorbed into itself. The essence of that divine being and its mental form was drawn into the depths of his creation. So inside this concept of this creator entity, within this mental cycle of that divine being, today there are two universes. As its mental form ultimately fragmented into what we call electrons and anti-electrons. So this creator entity fell in the antimatter universe, reformed itself there. It resides there to this day, and life first emerged there. This universe is entirely distinct from our own, and everything that developed there interacts, understands, is conscious of the existence of this being. And 5 to 6 billion years following this occurrence, the mythologies narrate this story. Life collapsed within this system of plasma, the kind of life found there in this neighboring antimatter universe. And its codes were then much later transferred to our universe, resulting in biological life, and thus in this other stage of these about 13.8 billion years over which this confusion evolves. Life started in that antimatter side of the universe. And here on our side, many civilizations obviously also emerged, and our brother Martin's question is, which civilizations exist in our universe? Biological, material, however we wish to refer to it. So these civilizations, do they know about Yahweh? Do they accept Yahweh? Do they communicate with Yahweh? Do they realize Yahweh exists? Different from those in the nearby universe, which, as I mentioned, everyone knows the history and knows who Yahweh is. The answer I can provide to our brother is based on the information we have. So, no, they don't. Most of them do not know Yahweh. And when life was moved from there to here, The Trimurti, that is Yahweh, along with two other entities, decided to create a representative, an envoy of this Trimurti, since they have a sort of physical body and cannot come from the anti-material realms to the material worlds, or they would self-destruct. Only the offspring of those so-called demons, or gods, the new generations that live in that neighboring universe, are the ones who recently managed to come from there to here. But the ancestors, the so-called gods, who are not gods at all, the primordial ancestral gods, never managed to come. So they created a representative, an envoy, and this representative is called in the Hebrew language Chokmah. When this history started to be recognized by Greek culture, the title Chokmah started to be called Sophia. So in this universe we inhabit, who in principle stands for the Trimurti, or represents this being named Yahweh, is Sophia, part of Yahweh's angels. One segment traveled from there to here through a rather crazy process, to say the least. Not to assist Sophia, but to monitor Sophia. Since Sophia was created with independence and no one knew, after Sophia's creation, if Yahweh from the other universe would be able to rule over Sophia here. Thus, Sophia was developing biological species through genetic manipulation and the very genetics from which Sophia was created. Nobody knows. No one knew of this creator until 300 million years ago, when there was a first complication at the border of the two universes, or at their intersection, and this is translated in Norse mythology as Ragnarok, where a section of the universe over there fell apart, and the axis mundi, meaning the link of that universe to ours, which back then was Mars. For a strange reason, Mars was the spot in our universe that was part of a conglomerate of realities. Administered by Odin, this was all destroyed. There, here, the life that Mars has, the atmosphere of Mars, all of this ended due to this problem. It was at that time that Sophia and other civilizations in this universe came to know that there was a lot of chaos on the other side. But no one knew. A race in the biological universe had never emerged, let alone in the other, that was astute, capable of observing and analyzing. Thus, Sophia, throughout the past 1 billion years, began generating a number of families where part of the genetics was biological, the other part was his, which was demon, meaning it had come from the other side, which meant he was just replicating his own code, as he is also hybrid. Thus, these creatures, which I refer to as biodemics, that during the last 800, 700 million years, 300 million years ago, this issue arose. Of Ragnarok, other families were created. And during this narrative, 700,000 years ago, the rebellion of Yel-Luz-Bel, known by us as Lucifer, happened. And one of the themes of Lucifer's rebellion, as I explained this in the books, and I take this opportunity while answering to our brother Martim to explain exactly who the hell was Yahweh, this being from a neighboring universe. Sophia claimed to be his representative, but Sophia didn't solve anything, and so on. So, in other words, Lucifer's rebellion, Martim, is a depiction, is a panel. It perfectly aligns with the question you posed, since there are countless extraterrestrial civilizations in our universe, biological civilizations. which are very good at creating technology, but not very capable in terms of producing understanding to comprehend things. We humans appeared during the uprising of Lucifer's rebellion due to the hybridization that eventually happened with this biodemic code, the demo code, and other manipulations performed. Many alchemies were performed, and we humans came into existence. And we were the race, and we remain the only one capable of comprehending this. But between the uprising of Lucifer's rebellion 700,000 years ago and the emergence of rational humans in the last 40-some thousand years, other races were also formed which are older than humans, and they began to develop a proto-rationality. And the so-called Nephilim or Anunnaki are precisely one of those races. This Anunnaki race, which is a biological race, it is one of the exceptions to what I said, because they had an understanding after Lucifer's rebellion. They began to understand that there was, so to speak, a commanding entity, a greater God or a creator God who existed in a place they were unaware of. And in the records of the Anunnaki, occasionally showed up on Nibiru, the planet they inhabit, and in their colonies, one or another Anunnaki entity, but that no one knew, but ultimately introduced themselves as messengers of Yahweh, or the being that governed it all. Therefore, the Anunnaki, they were aware. And a large part of the Anunnaki records are them wondering if they landed on Earth approximately 500,000 years ago. If that was fate, as they call it, or coincidence. In other words, if they came here because they had to come, or if they came here because the invisible hand of Yahweh made them end up on earth, or if this is coincidence, blah, 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 or in other words, to answer your question directly, a small number of races from the biological realm, like the Syrians, who are therianthropic beings, part from water. They are water-dwelling beings. They are amphibious, and a portion of their body is human, while the other portion is not human, which is quite odd. The Anunnaki are human-like, or in other words, a race from the biological universe. Throughout recent times, it ultimately discovered that Yahweh is real. Because of these, so to speak, events that have been occurring in the geopolitics of our universe. But the only race that Yahweh from the nearby universe wanted to control madly and fiercely was the human race, which was the last to emerge. And for that, he announced everything. The story of the Anunnaki, the story of Sophia, made Sophia yield its genome to artificially inseminate Mary to create a human Jesus who supposedly would be his messenger. Yahweh, as he could not create avatars of himself. So the stories begin to blend together. But to answer the question directly, most species in the biological universe are still unaware of Yahweh, and they will no longer know him. Only in the future will they realize he existed. Because even if he is to be reconstructed again in other patterns, these stories will tend to be a bit different from what has happened so far, which was profoundly dramatic, beastly, and monstrous. This new stage must be minimally decent, at the risk of we won't get anywhere. And this universe will also collapse and take everyone along. And few will manage to emancipate their consciousnesses, freeing themselves from a creation that shouldn't even exist. Most biological civilizations are still yet to awaken their capacity for reasoning, their analytical skills, and their emotional and instinctual management. We humans are already born ready to do this. Thus, they are replicating our genetic traits, our genotypes, the proteins we produce, to learn how to deal with the extremely complex themes that relate to being a dweller in a completely troubled creation crafted by a deranged entity, which cannot manage itself, much less handle what theoretically should be its responsibility. Thus, we have traveled far for very little. But from here on out, the civilizations that arose in the biological realm must awaken their potentials, especially as the civilizations of the extra-physical realm are in collapse. Thus, the entire narrative that began there will persist here. In some sense, everyone in the biological universe will eventually have to learn that there's a creator of it all. But I hope this creator has learned to deal with the tool creatures by then that he himself has created. Martin, this is what I can leave as seeds for reflection on the subject. I appreciate the question and hope to see you again, to contemplate the themes of the cosmic revelation together.
Access our knowledge portal, discover Orbum, the Cosmic Revelation streaming service. Dozens of hours of content to expand consciousness, with a dedicated app, accessible on Android and iOS, all in one location. All research and talks about cosmic revelation gathered in one central place, and additionally an exclusive community where seekers come together to exchange knowledge, insights, and awaken as one. Orbum, the Cosmic Revelation streaming platform.